Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz, and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe. And maybe check out my Facebook page, where this whole thing began, as well. All relevant links are in the description below, and of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of the characters featured in my stories, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Alrighty then. So, welcome. And what is up, Buttercup? Are you having a good day or a bad day? Whichever your answer, please allow me to distract you from your life and tell you a story, a Simsational story. Before I begin though, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done. But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with, let's go. Today's story is from Kelly-Anne Kalthis & Co., and we're at chapter 8. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though. So without further ado. It looked like she was really on her own again. Kelly-Anne wasn't sure they were all going to fit. 5 children and 1 adult in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment? She knew micro homes were trendy right now, but she needed more space than that. What was she going to do? Kelly-Anne's eldest daughter Kelsey agreed with her mother. It was hard enough sharing a room with 3 little ones, let alone the thought of another one squashed in there with them. Where was the crib even supposed to go? Or were the boys meant to start sharing a bed along with everything else they already shared? She wished her mother had thought ahead before falling pregnant yet again. Kelly-Anne felt like she'd never once had the chance to find the time to think ahead, because every time she started to catch her breath, she'd already fallen pregnant again, and the fathers, where were they? Off living carefree lives on their own. That's where. When Gino Grubb came by to try to start charging her rent again, Kelly-Anne couldn't help but scream her pregnancy hormone-infused rage at him. How could he even think of trying to charge her rent when she was carrying his baby? After Gino had left that day, Kelly-Anne worried that he would kick her out. But luckily for her, her little tantrum seemed to have had the opposite effect on him. Because when he came to visit the next week, he was very apologetic. He'd just been so overwhelmed by everything before that he hadn't stopped to think, to see it all from her point of view. Gino was firm that while he still definitely wasn't ready for the whole thing, he still wanted the option of one day maybe having a relationship of some kind with his child when it arrived. And in the meantime, he wanted to take some of the pressure off Kelly-Anne. Kelly-Anne was suspicious, but desperate. She knew she needed any help he was willing to give. Gino Grubb didn't want his child growing up in the same conditions as Kelly-Anne's other children currently were. She was a good mother. He believed that, even if nobody else did. But as a real estate mogul, he had something he wanted to offer her. A new apartment as rent-free as this one had always been. It would be his way of paying child support. Kelly-Anne wasn't sure it was a good idea. She had always prided herself on being a strong, independent woman who, despite the difficulties, had done everything on her own. By accepting this offer, she'd now be entirely dependent on Gino. Kelsey was excited though. Maybe she could finally have her own room. No such luck there though. The Kalthis kids would all still be sharing the 1 bedroom. However, now it was actually big enough for them all. And it even came with a few new toys. Some of their furniture they brought with them, but other bits and pieces, like a new bed for Carissa, Gino supplied, out of the goodness of his heart. The kids were all delighted with their new accommodations. Even though they all still shared a room, Kelsey was given a privacy screen she really appreciated. She was starting to grow up. And the younger kids loved finally having the room to spread out and play together. It was like a dream come true for them. All in all, Gino Grubb was feeling pretty pleased with himself and the whole situation. He was meeting his obligations as a father, and Kelly-Anne was looked after. The place was still modest, and it was affordable for him to give to her rent-free, but it was more appropriate than her old place had been for raising 5 children in, and certainly far more appropriate for her to be raising his child in. Kelly-Anne knew she should be grateful, and she was. The new place was wonderful. It had everything she needed, and it was obviously affordable, since it was free, but now she always had to keep Gino on her side, or he could kick her out. She would have to be very careful. Kelly-Anne also didn't know where the lines were meant to be drawn in their new relationship. Did she call Gino when she went into labour, or not? This was her 5th time giving birth at the hospital alone now, though, and she had her routine down pat at this stage. She'd just called Gino after the baby had been born. Gino Grubb and Kelly-Anne Kalthis' daughter, Kaylee Kalthis, was born at 4 a.m. on a Monday morning in the dead of winter. As her mother's 5th child, Kaylee was born into a household already overflowing with chaos and love, albeit not much from Kelly-Anne herself, and she was easily absorbed into the whirlwind of childhood activity that was her home. Gino Grubb came by to see his daughter that very week. He wasn't wasting any time. He wanted to look at the little girl, to see if he could see himself in her. Now that Kaylee was here, he was so proud to be her daddy. She was such a beautiful little thing, the spitting image of her mother, with violet eyes and dark hair that shone like the feathers of a raven. Kelly-Anne was pleased to see Gino so excited about their daughter. She was overwhelmed caring for 5 children, with 4 of them under 5 years of age. Maybe Gino would like to arrange a shared custody agreement with her. He could have Kaylee every weekend if he wanted. More, even. Gino had some bad news for Kelly-Anne, though. He was glad to be a father. Of course he was. And he loved little Kaylee with all his heart, but he wouldn't be being, overly involved in her life. If she needed something, school fees or whatnot, of course he'd be happy to take care of those. Just for Kaylee, mind you, none of the others. And they could all live rent-free in this wonderful apartment he'd provided for them, for as long as they needed. But that was going to be the end of it. He didn't want to spend any actual time with his daughter. Kelly-Anne was devastated. She hated all of this. If truth were told, she kind of hated her children. She'd never wanted to have 1 baby, let alone 5. They'd ruined her body and destroyed her future. And she knew it was terrible, but sometimes she just wished she could get rid of all of them. She'd been hoping that Gino would get so involved that he'd actually take Kaylee off her hands one day. But apparently that wasn't going to happen. At least Kelsey was there to help entertain and take care of her new baby sister. It was no surprise to Kelly-Anne that Kelsey took to taking care of Kaylee so quickly. She had always been so good with her little brothers and sister that it was only natural for her to be good with the new baby too. And in fact, Kelsey did do a lot for her little siblings. She was the one who got up with them in the mornings and made their breakfast after changing any nappies that needed changing, and then she'd set them all up in front of the TV before she left for school. But she didn't mind. She loved her little brothers and sisters. And besides, if she didn't do it, who would? And that brings us to the end of Chapter 8 of Kelly-Anne Kalthis & Co. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. Or like I said, look us up on Facebook. Bye!